How's it going, guys? I am your local hopeless historian, and today, being as it is the midway point of my first term as a graduate student with SOAS, University of London, I want to point out some of the differences that I've noticed between my undergrad with William Patterson University in New Jersey, United States, and my graduate studies with SOAS, University of London in the United Kingdom. So, the first major thing that I really noticed a difference in is the amount of assignments due. So in undergrad, for me, it was multiple assignments for each class due every week. Pretty much every time the class met, I would have something due. If it was for Japanese, I would have a worksheet due every single class. I would have a few pages of a workbook due every single class, and I'd have a quiz at least once a week. For the other classes, I'd have a 1 to 2 page paper due every single week on a specific reading, a topic, what have you, and also on online forum posts and things like that. Now with grad school, I don't know if this is with every grad school or every program, I'm graded on 3 or 4 things for each class per term. So with Japanese, I'm graded on 3 things: a 500 character journal entry, a end of term test, and a separate presentation and paper combination. The paper is basically what the presentation is on, but in written form. The other classes have 2 things. They have a midterm paper and a final term paper. So there's a higher amount of percentage of grade for each assignment, but with undergrad, it was just a ton of assignments that kind of rapidly accumulated every single week, and honestly made it a little more stressful than I am dealing with my grads program. Now, when it comes to volume of readings, surprisingly, my postgrad or my grad school, my master's degree in Japanese studies, actually has a significantly lower amount of readings every single week that are due. Well, between all my classes, I'm reading about 150 to 250 pages per week. Though I do choose to read the supplemental readings, so that would bring me to somewhere around 400 or 500 pages a week for my graduate program. For undergraduate, each class was 100 pages a week, easy to read. So I was taking 4 or 5 classes, and so 400 or 500 pages, depending on what class. Sometimes it would even be an entire book every week. The thing that actually brings me to my next point is the amount of classes. So for me, for most of my undergraduate program, I was taking 5, maybe 6 classes per a semester. Sometimes I was even taking 7 because I was taking additional classes at a community college to get it done quicker. With grad school, I know that most people are taking 3 courses per term in grad school from what I've talked to with other friends. I'm taking 4, but that's because the Japanese language is also a thing included in that. That isn't a mandatory requirement for a degree, but you can also take it for additional credits and make them up for other parts of your credits. So you need 180 credits for the entire school year, and Japanese, because it is a 2-term class, takes up 30 of those credits. That's another thing. 2-term classes. Within my graduate program, I have 1 2-term class. I could have taken others, which is Japanese, and it's over both terms. It is 1 singular class. Whereas in my undergraduate, it was you take Japanese 1 in the fall, Japanese 2 in the spring, so on and so forth. They were separate classes, separate entities as a total. Whereas the Japanese program I'm in now is graded by term, but there's also a grade in totality of the entire academic year. It's kind of weird, but I also kind of really like it, the additional leeway that you have with grading and the more concise progression you have through the language and through the lessons, because the professor knows exactly where you left off the previous semester, and there's less of a risk of having a new professor the next semester. The next thing that I would really point out to is the attendance policies for both of them, and the reason that they're in place for both of them. For undergrad, my particular university, William Patterson, in New Jersey had a thing of 3 absences that you were allowed per semester without doctor's notes or some other excuse that was valid. Otherwise, you'd be docked points for your grade. With postgraduate, you have 3 classes that you're allowed to miss, but the only reason that you get those 3 is because after that, health and wellness just wants to see if you're okay. That's the entire reason for them having attendance policies. There is nothing that goes against your grade for not showing up to classes. And in postgrad, at least for my university, most lectures, if not all lectures, have been actually recorded and posted online. Whereas William Patterson, nothing was recorded, nothing was posted online. Maybe the reading materials that were covered in class, maybe a brief description if you asked directly. But with my postgraduate professors, everything, the slide presentation that they have, all of the actual lecture itself, with them speaking, with the interactions of the students cut out because that's school policy, which is kind of cool. Though I am slightly iffy on the cutting out the student interaction or the student questions, because if you watch on the recordings, they don't reiterate the question for the recording purposes. So that kind of gets it a little bit annoying when you're trying to figure out what the person asked and what the topic. Now, with class selection when it comes to undergrad and grad school, obviously undergrad in the United States, I don't know how it is for other countries, including the United Kingdom, you have to take like a core curriculum of liberal arts while going through everything. So your classes can vary differently, and they can also widely change and be completely different from what your major is, your minors, and everything, the reason that you're going to school. So with me, my classes were, math. I didn't have to take an English, luckily. You're taking your math, you're taking your linguistics classes, you're taking your history class, you're taking your Asian studies classes, you're taking things that fit a core curriculum on top of that, such as a science and things like that. Now, I'm not against science. I like science. Science is cool. I like math. Math is cool. With postgraduate, none of that exists. You are almost essentially taking just what you need for what you're studying, with a little bit of exceptions because I'm in what is considered a taught master's program, so the track is a little bit more linear. But even with that, you have a lot of choices. So all of my classes have to do with Japan, with Asia, with China, with Korea, very specific to more so what I want to study, rather than having to deal with the history of Germany, the history of Europe, the history of America. I had to take a New Jersey history class in my undergraduate, which was absolutely terrible because, I hate to say it, but I didn't like the professor. I didn't like the way she handled that class. We had assignments due at 5 p.m. on like weekdays. I worked 40 to 50 hours a week in undergraduate, and she could not understand why I didn't have the ability to hand stuff in that early. I was at work. She said, "Oh, you do it during breaks." I'm like, "No, I can't. I get 15-minute breaks, counting my walk to and from the break room." With grad school, everything's been online. Again, less classes, so everything's been online. But all my classes are a lot more tailored towards what I want to do. I'm taking a class that is basic on teaching you about area studies and why it exists, with a focus on why Asian area studies or East Asian area studies exists. I'm taking a Japanese linguistics class, which I chose to take because I found the topic slightly interesting at the beginning, and now I'm actually really kind of into it because it's going over just social dynamics between Japanese with like honorifics, and it kind of helps me understand the language as an outside kind of force. I'm also taking Japanese, of course, and I'm taking a Korean film and literature class, which is something that actually really interests me, especially because we're covering periods from the early 1900s, so the annexation of Korea by Japan, all the way up till 1970, 1980, I believe, with a heavy emphasis on the prior works, which really does tie into the whole Imperial Japan thing, which I like to study and kind of what I involve myself with most. The other thing I find with my classes is some of them are integrated with undergraduate and postgraduate in SOAS, University of London, whereas, well, with William Patterson, they didn't have a master's history degree anymore. They got rid of that while I was there. No one signed up. Shocker, William Patterson doesn't have a lot of funding. They don't have a lot of students really going for that unless you're a teacher that's going for a mastery in history to kind of make it so you can make more money. So with SOAS, some of the classes, like the lecture, will have postgraduate or grad students and undergraduate students together, and then the seminars will separate. So the thing that annoys me slightly about this is that you'll do the lecture for the hour, and all of my classes, for some reason, immediately after it is the undergrad seminar. Then after that, an hour after the initial lecture, is the postgraduate seminar. But when you work out the actual number of students attending each seminar, there's about 5 to 8 undergraduates in my class of 35 people. There's 5 to 8 undergrads. So you would think that postgraduate would take priority, but we don't. But it is what it is. It's kind of a weird, unique thing, and I kind of like it because you get a little bit more raw perspectives of things, and you'll get people that are solely isolated in their own little fields. So you'll get a lot of people, like in some of the classes, they're, upper level undergraduates, so final year, 4th year undergraduate students with the grad students, which is kind of cool. I wish I got the opportunity as an undergrad, because I would have definitely taken it, even though, my grades were not great. I would have definitely taken it if I had the opportunity. Now, with my experience with undergrad and grad school, this is separate from the class, but my daily life is actually significantly different than from undergrad to graduate school. So with undergrad, I was working 40 hours a week, if not more, going to classes full time, and I was also training for powerlifting and strongman competitions. So my day was up at 4 in the morning, in my car, quarter after 4, drive to work from 5 a.m. till 30-45 minutes before I had class, gun it to class, go to class for the 2-3 hours, depending on if I had multiple classes or not. Go from there, go to the gym, drive the hour to get to the gym, train for 2.5 hours, bullshit for another half hour, drive back, shower, eat, get all of my work done, go to sleep, because I had really terrible roommates, not like my direct roommate, but like people that shared the apartment with us. Because I had such terrible roommates in that aspect, I would be going to sleep at midnight, 1 a.m. and repeat. I can't tell you how many times I almost fell asleep in my car because they would not stop partying. Like, I don't have a problem with parties. I like parties. But when it's Monday, I have work at 5 in the morning. I clearly told you that I have work early as shit tomorrow. Maybe keep the music a bit down. With postgrad, my first term here, I decided to not work, which is something very foreign to me, but I want to see how the workload, I could handle it and see how I interact, because I don't want my grades in postgraduate to be stifled, or the other opportunities I want to take, such as conferences and attempting to get things published, and I'm attempting to write my first academic book. I didn't want to get that stuff stifled the first term I was here. I kind of wanted to feel things out, how living in the UK was, and traveling to and from class. I'm also on a 20-hour work restrictions, which is kind of weird, but I'm able to keep more of my time dedicated towards my education and towards studying, not just for my classes, but Japanese. So my day, similar to that, is now I wake up 5 in the morning. Some mornings at 5:30 in the morning, I have my tutor once or twice a week. If I don't have my tutor, I am in the gym that's in my building for about an hour. I have my tutor for about an hour 2 times a week, once or twice a week. So one of those is going on for an hour at 5:30 to 6:30. I work out for an hour every morning. If I have the tutor, the hour after I work out, I eat food. I study Japanese for roughly an hour, hour and a half. Spend the next hour and a half, 2 hours doing all of my reading for classes that I have that day. Then I go to class. After class, if it's a Japanese class, I will stay for an extra half hour, maybe hour, and just covering what we went over in the class so I can kind of just comprehend it a little bit better. And if I have questions, my professor's office hours are immediately after class, so I can just ask about that, which is phenomenal. After all this, I'm done with my day in terms of getting all my coursework done, doing all my studying, everything. I am done between 4 and 5, maybe 6 p.m. because one class runs until 6 p.m. at night, and I'm done. And that makes it so that Monday, Thursday, Friday, sometimes Wednesday, I go to do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, however long the class is, if I just want to do technique. And I'm done for the day. I go home, I eat my food that I've prepared over the weekend, and I go to sleep. I'm asleep by 10 p.m. the latest, and I'm up at 5. I have 7 hours of sleep every single day. On weekends, it's a little bit wonky because I like to stay up to watch some fights. But in undergrad, I wasn't afforded sleep. I wasn't afforded the time to really be 100% up on my studies. So my GPA did take a hit. I graduated with a 3.23 GPA overall, and a 3.34 for my history, and a 3.01 for my East Asian Studies degree. Here, their grading system is weird. So that brings me to my next point off this long tangent. The grading systems are so weird and so different because in undergraduate, at least in America, in William Patterson in New Jersey, a 93 and above was an A. Here, an 80 and above is first class with distinction. A 70 is first class. Like, if I got below an 80 in undergrad, I was furious. With this, if I get an 80 or 79, it's great. Phenomenal grade. I get to say I got first class in that class. Don't know what that translates to. I just know it's good, and it's got to work good for my applications for PhD programs when I eventually do it. Now, my final point is, at least in my situation, is the living arrangements for me in undergrad versus postgrad. Undergraduate, I dormed for roughly 2 years of that, and the first year was phenomenal. I loved it. For three or four semesters, but yeah, I loved it, and then got roommates that I really hated. But it was just a different thing. I was having to rely on my schedule lining up with other people's schedules. My sleeping kind of had to be like worked around by other people. I didn't like forcing people to work around my sleep schedule and me work around their schedules, because I was doing things all weird times of day and night, kind of just when I had the ability to do things for studying, for schoolwork, whatever. Now I'm in my own very tiny apartment. I will put the video of the exploration and tour right there. And I do really like it. I extremely prefer that over what I had, because I am the one that regulates my time. I choose when I wake up. No one wakes me up. I choose when I go to sleep. No one keeps me awake. I choose when I go to the gym. I choose when I cook food. I don't have to wait for anyone to be done with cooking. I make sure everything is tidy and clean as much as I can. I spend about a half an hour a day cleaning up various areas of my apartment. It helps it keep it overall clean and tidy. It's not as great as a system as I would like, but a half an hour a day kind of gets everything cleaned relatively. Whereas when I was done with other people, I cleaned my area. I cleaned up after myself. I cleaned my pots, pans, and dishes as soon as I was done with something, but they would leave stuff in the sink and make it almost impossible for me to clean. Overall, I'd like to say that at least within the first half of my first term in postgraduate or grad school, I'm significantly less stressed than I was in undergrad. Obviously, with not working 40, 50 hours a week, kind of helps a lot. not dealing with being sleep deprived, not dealing with annoying roommates, really does go a long way for me being able to focus and kind of keep a good balance of keeping myself healthy by working out 6 days a week, doing jiu-jitsu 2-3 days a week, and all that, where I'm kind of just flowing along. I'm just studying, I'm doing everything I need to do, and it seems like it's kind of unsettling how much of a cakewalk that this is being so far. Like, I've already presented in a conference this semester. I've already submitted to chair a panel in a different country. I've also submitted a thing for another conference. Whereas an undergraduate, I didn't have the ability to even think, let alone attempt to do more than my course load. I'm thoroughly enjoying this, as of right now. And the final thing I would say is, with Japanese, I am now inspired to study more again. I really haven't studied much since late 2019, early 2020. I kind of just got burnt out and kind of got resentful of my undergraduate program. It was very lackluster. I wasn't seeing the progress, results, or the challenge that I wanted, because it was very... they were passing people that shouldn't have gone through. Whereas now, I actually care because I have a task to work for. I am going to Japan next year. I am studying with Sophia University next year for the other part of my master's degree. I have a tangible reason to continue studying other than the grade. That's it.